How does Kanplexity integrate into a traditional project management environment? There is a different way of thinking in traditional projects. I used to be a traditional project manager myself. I was one for about 15 years before I started exploring agility. There are some challenges with projects, and a lot of people sometimes conflate projects with fixed dates. And actually, you can have a project without a fixed date. But a lot of people do have projects with fixed dates, and projects with fixed dates do cause problems, whether you're being agile or not. And let me explain a few of the problems, even if you're not doing agile, some of the problems that you might have with fixed date projects. The first issue is the Tuckman model. Bruce Tuckman in 1965 wrote a paper about when people get together in groups, what stages do they go through, if any, in terms of how they bed down as a team and how they perform as a team. Oxford University has a group called the Oxford Review Group, and they review models every now and again, even if they haven't been peer reviewed, just to see are they sensible, how much are they referenced, all that kind of stuff. They looked at the Tuckman model, and in science, they don't tell you that a model is valid, they just tell you that it's not invalid, or that it's not incoherent. But it's still, all models are wrong, some are useful, as George Box said. But essentially what they're saying is, it's probably okay. And with the Tuckman model, you've got forming, you get together, kind of honeymoon period. It applies to married people as well, groups, any kind of group setting. The honeymoon period. And then you've got the friction. Why did you put your toothpaste there over there? Why didn't you put down the lid and all that kind of stuff, all that usual stuff. That happens in teams as well, but obviously not about toothpaste. But we have different types of friction. And then it's good to have that friction, especially if it's healthy conflict about ideas and so on. And then we kind of muddle our way through it, and we norm, and eventually we perform. For a normal team, in my experience, that takes 2 months. 2 months just to get to norming, about 4 months to get to performing. If you're a Navy SEAL, you can do this in hours, because they're trained on how to team, how to build a team. But a Navy SEAL you never met before, and how do you bond really quickly. They go through the same phases, but they're much quicker. The same thing happens in marriage, except it's much longer. But if you're in a project and you've got a deadline in 6 months' time, I don't know, it just feels a bit weird. The team is still forming. I set up this dedicated project team for this project. The team is still forming. They haven't even normed 2 months in. Meanwhile, the deadline is coming closer to me. That's problematic. That's problem number one with fixed date projects. Problem number two is the J curve, the change curve. So let's say our performance is here. And some genius in our organization thinks we're going to use a different approach. Could be lean or scrum or whatever. Pick your poison. I don't mind. But let's say you're here, but somebody wants your performance to go to here. They want it to improve. You see, they want it to go to there, right? I got away with meeting teams for 8 years, and the performance did improve, because actually the only way it was up, they were so bad, the only way it was up. But actually, if you've got a really good team and you give them a change, the performance gets worse. It's called the J curve. It's like happens in grief when people die. Also happens with change. And if you really manage the change very well, there's a little dip, but there's still a dip. If you don't manage it well, it's a big dip. And that can take a couple of months as well. So you got your fixed date deadline in front of you. You're going through these Tuckman phases. Your blood pressure's going up. You're getting anxious. Now you got a change to deal with as well. Oh, you got a bit of a challenge here. That's the second problem. Third problem with projects with fixed dates, right, is let's say there's a big problem in your organization. Everybody knows there's a problem. Maybe you put in some system that doesn't work. Everybody knows it doesn't work. And we all have to work with it every day, and it's making everyone slower. It's going to take you 9 months to fix the problem if you have the will to fix the problem. But your project is 6 months. How much appetite are you really going to have to fix that big problem when you got a deadline in 6 months? I put it to you, you have zero appetite. You want to get that project finished in time, you're going to leave that little thing to the side for a while, and it won't be smelling too good. So that's the third problem with projects with fixed dates. The fourth problem with projects with fixed dates, particularly when you have set up a dedicated project team, is it builds up this belief that if we just want to add another project to our organization, all we have to do, we just need to spin up another team. That's a great idea. Yeah, spin up a new team, because we got infinite scale. We can add more teams. We can scale our way out of any problem. We can outsource our way out of any problem. Fantastic idea. Give that man a prize. Our Lady. Except there's a problem because all these teams are depending on just a few people in the company. There's a little back room in the company somewhere called the constraint of the bottleneck, and everything goes through them. And at some point, performance doesn't keep increasing, it flattens and it goes down. So I prefer projects to be barcoded or striped through existing teams. It's not ideal. Jerry Weinberg said if you got one project, you're focused on that project, and so that's it's good. You're not distracted. You got two projects, you're not 50% focused on each project. You're 40% focused on each project because you use 20% from context switching. Where was I again? What was I doing? What was it? All that kind of thing. But actually, on balance, it's still better to stripe projects through long-term stable teams because they've gone through the Tuckman phases. They've already gone through the big J curve. They probably have the appetite to fix the problems that are stewing in the organization. And we're not leading to the delusion that we have infinite scale. So I'm not saying never have a dedicated project team with Scrum or whatever other approach you want to do, and just explain there are downsides. You're going to get very stressed with a team that's just getting used to things. I had a team 10 years ago. They were brilliant, like the second best team I ever had. After 8 months, they had to disband because the money ran out. The project funding was gone, so no more funding. Like if that was a long-term stable team, we could just keep feeding with new projects, new work. So feed the backlog of projects into really good teams, let them take the work away. That's the most effective way to get your projects done in your organization. That also gives you focus because you're deciding what the most important projects are. And also, if you're really good at outcome orientation in your project, you've got a really strong business case, you know what outcomes you're looking for. So when you say to the team, say, well, I'm looking for these outcomes, and you've got this big long list of things you want to get done, you can then explore what we call 80-20 thinking. You can actually say, how do we get 80% of the outcomes with just 20% of the outputs? How can we really, maybe do less things to deliver more stuff, get more benefits, better ROI, and so on? Because I can guarantee you that your project, the bottom 80% of your project, is not as valuable as the next project on the list, top 20%. So for the good of the organization, even though there's a downside with multitasking and all that kind of thing, as long as you can have some kind of reasonable focus, like 2 to 3 projects at a time max, I would say, maybe 2, ideally 1 even, if you can kind of feed them in nicely. Whatever approach you're using, focus improves flow. And for people doing traditional project management, you can use Kanban. You can use authentic Kanban. You can limit the number of projects you do at the same time. Within the project, you limit the number of work items you're working on at the same time. Your flow will improve. You might see, I saw it only a few days ago, where a team, their throughput quadrupled, and their cycle times went down by to a third of what they were. Phenomenal improvement in performance just from focus. Focus and finish. Focus and finish. So whether you're traditional or agile, just focus and you'll be good. That's my advice.